Mr. Meuser, who is the chairman of our Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee, and who is celebrating his 39th birthday today. Well, that's what you said, Dan. It was 39.
Well,
But happy birthday nonetheless.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad you're not under oath, by the way. I'm 40. Well, thank you. Thank you very much to our witnesses. A very important subject. This committee, I think, as you know, and the Trump administration are working on correcting course to our economy, removing barriers to growth, expanding housing supply through the Housing for the 21st Century Act, strengthening capital formation through the INVEST Act, revitalizing community lending through the Main Street Capital Access Act, all bills that have been passed. Taken together, these efforts reflect a broader policy shift away from government-driven market distortion and toward supply-side growth, capital formation, access to capital, housing affordability, pro-growth. What we used to call supply-side, but we don't want to necessarily call it that, but that's what it is. More domestic supply, the more we make in the United States, we exceed demand with supply, inflation comes into check, comes down, and even prices start getting less, and we create competition at the same time. But Mr. O'Leary, good seeing you. From your vantage point as a venture capitalist, in terms of job creation, business formation, long-term economic growth, what benefits do come from this regulatory and tax supply side initiatives and approach?
Well, I think when we were discussing regulation before in all 11 sectors, if you gave an individual, an entrepreneur, and the way I look at it, you know, I go into these classes of students, 240 in the cohort, and I know with certainty, and I tell them this, that in 25 years, 2/3 will work for the other third of the class. That's basically the ratio when students emerge. And so when you ask these individuals, what would you rather have? Reduction in tax or reduction in regulation? It's always reduction in regulation because they assume the taxes, they're competing with everybody else at the same tax rate. So what they want is a path to be able to deploy capital with less friction. And that, by the way, applies to all 11 sectors of the economy. We've been talking a lot about real estate. That's the most recent sector of the S&P 500. That's the 11th sector. But every other sector also has issues around regulation. So, you know, something's happened over the last 20 years that somebody decided through multiple administrations that more regulation is better than innovation. I can assure you that is not the case. And it's now time to really take a jackhammer to that stuff and get rid of it and let the economy flourish. And the market believes that is going to happen because you're seeing new highs every day in the Dow. So somebody's optimistic out there. It's not just domestic capital. Money's coming in from all over the world into this index because they believe you're going to do it. You're going to jackhammer regulations.
Thank you. You know, I was just with some folks who do a lot of 7(a) loans and obviously small businesses, and they say access to capital continues to be the #1 concern of small businesses, up to, as you mentioned before, Mr. O'Leary, $50 million and such. So, Mr. Brooks, with the decline of community banks, how has it affected mortgage availability, housing development lending, and overall affordability?
Well, Congressman, as I said earlier, one of the biggest issues in mortgage finance is who bears the risk. And over the last 15 years since the financial crisis, it's mostly been the government. So bank formation has been at an all-time low. That has reversed in President Trump's second term, but we have very few new bank starts until the last 12 months. And the banks that do exist, especially the community banks, have more or less been told that mortgages are a risky asset and you should stay away from them. So as a result, community banks tend to be local small business lenders and not very much else. That can change, and we know what a community bank-driven housing finance system looks like because we had it for 80 years between the Great Depression and the financial crisis. It worked pretty well. Now we have a government balance sheet for all of this, which is terrible. My main point here is it's desirable for community banks to drive the housing finance system because community banks are relationship bankers. They know the clients, they know the credits, and they know the collateral better than any Washington, D.C. or Wall Street credit manager will ever know. And so it's in all of our interest that community banks deliver what they used to deliver, which was the majority of housing finance. And
certainly one of our axioms here has been to make community banks great again under our chairman, French Hill. Dr. Moore, the affordability relief, inflation moderation, wages rising, mortgage rates easing, what extent does housing market depend on sustaining this pro-growth economy?
So I'll summarize it in the 13 seconds I have left, which is what the chairman said at the outset. The best solution to all these problems, including housing affordability, is economic growth. The stronger economic growth, people's incomes rise, they can afford more, so keep it up. And the most positive feature
Gentleman's
of your
time
tax
has
bill
expired.
was the allowing the businesses
Gentleman's
on
time
their
has
capital
expired.
purchases.
So my time has expired. Thank you,
expired.
Mr.